But key takeaways from you.
Well, I think your anchor summed it up fairly well. It was, I think a fairly cautious approach from Beijing in terms of growth, setting a growth target. The fiscal deficit is I think going to be a bit larger than I was expecting, 3.2% instead of 3%. And I think it shows that Beijing really is looking to have that balance between starting to cast attention to long-term financial risks, and that's the emphasis on sustainability, but a recognition that this recovery risks losing some momentum and thus needing to support growth over the course of the year.
Is this, in a way, a reflection of a more confident Beijing because it's no longer too concerned about, what the other economies think about its shorter-term plan? It is about its longer-term goals.
I think that's exactly right. The theme of this year, of this NPC, is very much on the long-term strategic goals. It's on the 5-year plan, which is really a 15-year plan because it's laying out an agenda to 2035. So I think for 2021, it's continuity. And Xi Jinping is really looking to shift the system to focus a bit less on high growth and much more on strategic priorities and a longer-term agenda.
Michael, does the sort of fiscal targets that they're suggesting at the moment for this year suggest to you that they could be tapering in a way?
I think they are tapering, but it's quite gradual, and you look at where the soft spots are in the economy. It's consumption, it's the household sector, and it's employment. And those are all areas that the Premier highlighted in the work report. And it's areas where you do need some fiscal support, I think, to keep things going. So I think it shows that tapering is going to be quite gradual this year and very much dependent on conditions. I mean, they're giving themselves a lot of flexibility. 6% growth is not going to be difficult for China to achieve, given a very low base from last year. So it's quite conservative, and I think they will do better than that if they can, but they're giving themselves flexibility so that they don't have to stretch too far if they're worried about financial risks.
In your view, Michael, how ambitious has this particular 5-year plan, which is a work report, been compared to others that you've been through and listened to?
I think it's very ambitious in the sense that this is the most geopolitical of any of China's 5-year plans. I don't think it's particularly ambitious in terms of growth targets, but what China's trying to do here, promote innovation at the cutting edge, reduce reliance on the US in critical areas of technology. These are, I think, very ambitious goals. And the question here is going to be, how aggressive is the geopolitical push when it is in tension with economic pragmatism, right? It's not easy to move quickly to reduce reliance on US technology. And that's the balancing act that I think is going to be difficult and very important to watch here.
Yeah, and also let's just move to other bits and bobs of this as well. It's geopolitical, certainly, and one of the things which I found quite interesting was them, or should I say Li Keqiang, saying that they will actively consider joining the CPTPP. Of course, this is in the aftermath of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We have at the moment somebody in the White House who is taking a much more multilateral approach already. How does that sit with this?
It's fascinating. I mean, what this shows is Beijing looking to avoid being isolated by the Biden administration. They know that Biden's playbook is going to be to try to build coalitions against China to keep the pressure up on trade and technology policy. And Beijing has moved quite aggressively to head this off with, pushing through the RCEP deal last year, even more so pushing through the investment agreement with the EU. And I think CPTPP is still a bit of a long shot. It's still an aspirational goal, but it really shows that Beijing is determined to avoid being outflanked and isolated and wants to position China to be able to meet high standard trade deals in coming years.
Michael, speaking of goals, let's take a listen to what Premier Li Keqiang had to say about some of those goals.
All development goals and tasks for the year were accomplished, and major headways have been made in China's reform, opening up, and socialist modernization drive.
Michael, we talk about the modernization of China's economy. From what you gather from the speech so far, 5 years down the road, how will China look like?
5 years down the road, well, much obviously will depend on how they implement this plan. But I think what we'll see is China moving into a lower growth mode, being willing to accept lower growth. And frankly, I think a lot of the structural constraints on China's economy, including the demographic wave, are going to dictate that. So lower growth, and clearly more of a focus on balanced development, on environmental protection, on quality of life issues, and a big focus on innovation. Now, I think there are going to be challenges over this next 5-year timeframe in terms of controlling debt, in terms of really being able to have these new growth drivers replace some of the old growth drivers that Beijing is looking to shed. So I think it will be a challenge. I'm not expecting a hard landing, but I think there could be growing challenges.